Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm Zach Markowski, and today I'll be continuing on reading various excerpts from Thus Spake Zarathustra by Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche. And today I'm going to read Neighbor Love. And this kind of has its connections to the last section in Thus Spake Zarathustra that I read, which was the friend, because neighbor love is basically the bad stand-in for a real friend. Neighbor love is like comradeship, right? It's necessity, it's happenstance, it's incidental, it's need, but it's not the full force and strength of real love, of creativity, of responsibility, of feeling real kinship and affinity for someone that is deeper than the fact that both of you had to be in the trenches, or both of you were stuck at a place in time, both of you just happened to be hungry and you could feed off one another, right? That's Nietzsche's biggest criticism of mankind, man and woman to date, is that they're two animals alighting on another's load. No different for man and woman. Slave and tyrant is no different a dichotomy. If man has been the tyrant, woman has been the slave. Amidst all men and women, both men and women have always been slaves. So this whole concept of neighbor love that evolved out of the Western Christian mythos, in Europe and then in a country like America, this is the kind of mentality he's criticizing. He's saying actually most of these people, they're bad friends to themselves, they're bad company to themselves, they feel bad themselves. Therefore, what they're doing is inflicting themselves on others. They're not actually being friendly, they're being needy. Anyway, this is neighbor love. Ye crowd around your neighbor and have fine words for it. But I say unto you, your neighbor love is your bad love of yourselves. Ye flee unto your neighbor from yourselves, and would fain make a virtue thereof. But I fathom your unselfishness. Right, right. So he's saying, yeah, you flee to your friends and your family and your neighbors. You act like you're of use there, you're of importance there. Oh, you're so needed. But like growing up in a country like America, for instance, I can tell you that I saw this sort of thing all the time. People would hide behind a good public image and often be terrible, horrible, careless, irresponsible people behind everyone's back. It's basically the whole Western fantasy. You become rich and independent enough, you don't need anyone, you can do whatever you want regardless of the consequences. And then everyone hides behind this unselfishness, like, oh yes, you did all that giving, that was actually for you. Oh look, you're being affable, it's because you know who pays you, so you got to play along, right? These are the sort of behaviors and the covers for unselfishness, right, that Nietzsche's talking about, right? You see that most people's friendliness is their need. It's just their need, right? You hedge your bets where you must. So he goes on, the thou is older than the I. The thou hast been consecrated, but not yet the I. So man presseth nigh unto his neighbor. And what he's pointing out is that the group is what's sanctified and justified and allowed. The individual has yet to be codified as a valid unit, socially or otherwise, right? The idea that we're all either we're laid with values or we appropriate values, but regardless, heavy expectations are set upon everyone at birth. Everyone owes somebody, essentially. So, and if not anyone else, if no responsibility to the tribe or the society, then they at least have themselves to take care of. But that's kind of a digression. Do I advise you to neighbor love? Rather, do I advise you to neighbor flight and to furthest love? He's saying, away from these people, away from these types of people, away from these attitudes, away from these behaviors. Higher than love to your neighbor is love to the furthest and future ones. How about your children or your children's great-great-grandchildren? Does anyone ever think about them? Do people think about the future at all? Does anyone stop in the present day and go, gee, what will future humanity, 50, 100, 200 years from now, think of the people who are alive today? Were they good people? Were they good neighbors? Did they not destroy and trash and gobble up the earth, right? See how people behave. They have no regard for the future. The whole pretense is that they're good people in the here and now and they earn their heaven after. But in reality, they're selfish, they're self-seeking, and they have no care or regard for even their own children or their children's children or their great-great-great-great-grandchildren in the future. So Nietzsche's saying, no, think of those people in the future. Think of those furthest loves. Higher than love to your neighbor is love to the furthest and the future ones. Higher still than love to the men men is love to things and phantoms. The phantom that runneth on before thee, my brother, is fairer than thou. He's saying the people in the future will be better than you. They will replace you. They are meant to be your replacement. Why don't you actually think of them? Why don't you work and build towards them? What does future human consciousness need, want, look like, sound like? How does it get its needs met, especially as our environment and our ways of life has changed and will continue to change, arguably for the worse? But going on, the phantom that runneth on before thee, my brother, is fairer than thou. Why dost thou not give it unto thy flesh and thy bones? Right? He's saying, why don't you give to them? Why do you care about all these selfish little people who are just doing nothing but stealing from the future? Right? But thou fearest and runnest unto thy neighbor. Oh, and to clarify, when I say stealing from the future, he later says, if not here, it's elsewhere in this book, but he says, these types of people, this type of mindset, this type of mentality, this general mankind, these last men, that they crucify the whole human future by trying to keep the world, their minds, and everything around them in stasis, by living in the past, right? By being atavistic animals that tend backwards and are afraid of what's forward, even though there's no stopping what's forward, right? But thou fearest and runneth unto thy neighbor, right? It's need, it's cowardice, it's animals congregating together. Like what he says about the last man, they have left the regions where it is hard to live, and they huddle together for warmth, for one still needs warmth, right? That kind of thing. So you cannot endure it with yourselves, and do not love yourself sufficiently, so you seek to mislead your neighbor into love, and would fain gild yourself with his error. Right? You fool your neighbor into believing that what you have is love, and then you hope that it reflects well on you, the fact that he's a big old dummy, or that he's your perfect prey animal, right? So, would that ye could not would that ye could not endure it with any kind of near ones, or your neighbors, then would ye have to create your friend and his overflowing heart out of yourselves, right? This goes back to the friend, right? He's saying, if you realize how barren, bereft, and how little there is to these people, you'd have to generate your own psychic companion. You'd have to devise your own free spirits. You'd have to build yourself up because you realize there's so little to give to those future ones. And that might seem, what would you say? That might seem counterintuitive to say, well, look at this world. Everything that's been built has been generated for the, but then you go, who's it for though? And it's for the people of the present. It's not for anyone in the future, and it never has been, right? So going on, would that ye could not endure it with any kind of near ones or their neighbors. So basically saying, because you're such bad company and your neighbors are such bad company, you can settle for each other. But would that you could not endure them, right? This is later on where he says, and I've referenced it before here, Nietzsche straight up words it, or Zarathustra says it as, only by being so little satisfied with yourself can you be so little satisfied with what's in others. You have to say, away with thee, until you get fed up with them and say, away with me, right? It's him saying, you suffer from yourselves too much and your neighbor too little. You guys are all way too self-satisfied. So it kind of goes on from there. Ye call in a witness when ye want to speak well of yourselves, and when ye have misled him to think well of you, ye also think well of yourselves. Right? So you convince someone to lie and then believe the lie. Not only doth he lie who speaketh contrary to his knowledge, but more so he who speaketh contrary to his ignorance. And thus speak ye of yourselves in your intercourse, and belie your neighbor with yourselves. Right? He's saying you mistake one another all the time. You don't understand each other all the time. Thus said the fool, association with men spoileth the character, especially when one hath none, right? You're going to pick up their bad character. There's all culture for you. That's not a scary thought. The one goeth to his neighbor because he seeketh himself, right? Like you're going to find yourself in someone else. And the other because he would fain lose himself, right? Escape from himself. But either way, your bad love to yourselves maketh solitude a prison to you. You can't tolerate your own company, right? What kind of person would you have to be to desire your own company, to be good company, and to perhaps desire your company more than anyone else, to where other people would also love to have it because they know it, you've made it good company, right? The fashioning of personality, character, style, not just the image, but the actual responsibility of a sentient being. So, Reading on, your bad love to yourselves makes solitude a prison to you, right? This is why you shouldn't trust people who aren't okay with themselves. The furthest ones are they who pay for your love to the near ones, right? So the people of the future die. The people here suck yet are so content with each other that the people of the future are forever doomed thereby, because we're forever living in the past. We're forever tending backwards towards being more animal and less man, more subhuman, less human, right? This is what I'm saying. And then I think there's a divided personality type. Extroverts and introverts are night and day different subspecies, and it kind of just goes from there. But reading on, so the furthest ones pay for your love to the near ones, right? Your love of the present costs the future. And when there are but 5 of you together, a 6th must always die. And this is a biblical reference, right? Where 2 or 3 are you gathered together, there I am in your midst, right? That's God or Jesus speaking. And Nietzsche says, no, where 4 or 5 of you are gathered, a 6th must always die, right? And this is kind of where, your Butler, I think, was it Rene Butler or Gerard Butler, whatever his name is where he got his whole escapism idea, rather his scapegoat idea. He saw this thread through all of Nietzsche that the whole of society is constantly pruning, selecting, and deselecting aspects of itself to save its own immortal soul, right? So you cut off the dregs, you kill the lesser, you do all these activities to try to cull for a better future. So I love not your festivals either. Too many actors found I there, and even the spectators often behaved like actors, right? And there's a knowledge of Greek culture as passed down through the ages. Everyone imitates the actors. Not the neighbor do I teach you, but the friend. Let the friend be the festival of the earth to you and a foretaste of the Superman. I teach you the friend and his overflowing heart. But one must know how to be a sponge if one would be loved by overflowing hearts. Right, you'd have to have the capacity for the presence, the knowledge, the understanding, the ability to communicate, to receive and reciprocate, right? It goes both ways. If someone just takes from you, they're not a friend. If they can take while giving, they're a really good friend. So, I teach you the friend in his overflowing heart. Yes, I teach you the friend in whom the world standeth complete, a capsule of the good, the creating friend who hath always a complete world to bestow. Meaning they're not going to come to you in just lack. They're always going to have an entire world to give. They're not going to short you. They're not going to run a scheme on you. They're not going to pull a fast one, right? And then they're not going to turn around and say, oh yes, my need becomes my virtue. Look, I'm such a social animal. Well, again, of course, because you have to be to get paid. But if it wasn't for that, we know what people are really like, especially as an American here in America. Oh man, it's the worst. It really is like they wanted to make the worst people of the worst worlds. And as the world unrolled itself for him, so rolleth it together again for him in rings. Is the growth of good through evil, is the growth of purpose out of chance. And this is what Nietzsche is all about. He was realizing that humanity has no purpose, no reason, no goal. Nothing exists for a reason or a purpose, and it's all humanly created. So if these things are lacking and failing, it's on humanity, right? It's on humanity to do something about it or to just die thereby, right? And he understands that it could just easily as much go either way. But that's why he posits the Superman, and that you'd have to even create such a being, mankind would first have to learn how to love and to be friends. Now imagine that after thousands of years of supposedly being taught what love and friendship is, that what Nietzsche is realizing is that these animals are hardly civilized. They're hardly more than animals at all. They can barely think. They can take orders well. They can do jobs well. They can do tasks well, like a trained monkey. But they don't know what love is. They don't know what generosity is. They don't know what original thinking and creativity is. Right, kind of going on down the list here of the world Nietzsche woke up to. So, I teach you the friend in whom the world standeth complete, a capsule of the good, the creating friend who hath always a complete world to bestow. I know I read that, but I'm going to read it again. And as the world unrolled itself for him, so rolleth it together again for him in rings. The growth of good through evil is the growth of purpose out of chance, right? Because remember, in the Christian world, evil became the eternal principle. So good actually had to come to exist to break through that, right? A third power, a third force. So, that's Nietzsche's immoralism and his free spirits. And it goes from here. Let the future and the furthest be the motive of thy today, right? So again, those people of the future, are they going to, because when they look back, they're going to see humanity for what they are today. They're going to realize that most of these people are just barely trained animals, and the world's in a lot of trouble because their future world will still be recovering and fixing and dealing with that. That's not going to change. We're basically in crisis skeleton management mode now because there's not enough competent and willing people in the world to take care of the endless problems here, right? There's a lot of irresponsibility. There's a lot of laziness, a lot of parasitism, a lot of people who feed and feed far more than they ever feed others. A lot more people who know how to take than give. And that's why this situation is the way it is. That's why he would say something like, you crowd around your neighbor and have fine words for it, but I say unto you, your neighbor love is your bad love of yourselves. Ye flee unto your neighbor from yourselves. You would fain make a virtue thereof, but I fathom your unselfishness. Right, and in that, they crucify and destroy the whole human future. They sold out the children. They've deselected for every person on the planet, more or less. It's pretty crazy to see how far the Western world went off the chain. And to be clear, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it was wholly unavoidable. That's the difference between Nietzsche and other thinkers, is the reason why Nietzsche is the godfather of real thinking and modern thinking and thinking with a brain, is that he recognized, it's not just about projecting what you want onto the world. You actually have to see what the affects are, not just effects either. And he saw that all this stuff was incontrovertible. To try and fight historical forces like decadence, nihilism, even Christianity to some degree, despite his active war against Christianity and his criticism and polemics against it, it's like even then he understood you can't actually maintain that position, because it's like arguing with, I don't know, a growing or a dying tree. The tree's going to grow or the tree's going to die, but either way, it's already on its way up, it's already on its way down. It's always just a question of discerning which tree is which tree, right? Which plant is which plant. So, finishing this off here, let the future and the furthest be the motive of thy today, right? So he's saying, think of the future, think of the better human beings, think of the more sentient, the more sapient, the better, superior models that will come. They are coming. They've been here and they'll be here again. That's all they do, is return. A seeking and reseeking and fleeing and refleeing of many types of gods. So, in thy friend shalt the love of the supermen be as thy motive. My brethren, I advise you not to neighbor love. I advise you to furthest love. So he means, respect and save yourself by extricating yourself from such types of love, which is more tantamount to probably trauma, abuse, or neglect, right? Or just, at least at the very, in other aspects, cruelty and shallowness, or in the terms of purpose and aim, utterly meaningless and just wasting time, right? Because honestly, that's what animals have always done here. What else do? You eat, you sleep, you hunt. If you're okay, you're okay. There's not much more to say or do about it, other than the fact that we as humans crave novelty and complexity. Anyway, this was Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra, neighbor love. He advises you to the furthest love. That's to both extricate yourself from the bad company around you, and also to figure out how to be better company for yourself to generate your own world to give, right? Lots of people seek to give. They don't have much to give. Lots of people seek to take, and they want everything to take. Nietzsche saying, don't be like these cretins. Don't be like these subhuman, devolving, degenerating animals. To actually achieve or arrive anywhere, to have a purpose, you'd have to set an aim and a purpose. He points to the future. He says, this is what we're investing in. We're building, we're making, we're thinking of the superior, better thinking, better feeling, better living, better animal that has yet to be made. And that's the ideal future to build towards. It's a person. Unlike utopian, which is actually dystopian history for all of history, it's a person, not a place. Anyway, again, I'm Zach Markowski. Thanks for your time. Hope you're well wherever this finds you. And if things go well for both of us, I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.